Good evening and welcome to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice for your everyday life. My name is Andy. I am operations manager here at IKYA Center, and we are really pleased to have you with us tonight, both on YouTube Live and all of our characters in the studio audience here. And it's a big night for everybody. We're closing in on the end of the year. It's the holiday season. We've got a new year ahead. And particularly here at IKYA Center, we have a couple of wonderful things to celebrate. Tonight is our 40th episode already of IKYA Live, and we just rounded 5,000 subscribers for our IKYA.official YouTube channel. So we've got a lot to celebrate, including the holiday season and a new year coming soon. So we thought tonight was a perfect opportunity to do a year in review, where we will take kind of all of the news topics that we've looked at this year and look back on the most important and provocative and popular news topics that we've discussed. And we'd also like to roll in your perspective. So please join us tonight in bringing your highlights of the year. What has been the highlights of your spiritual growth this year? Or what have you found particularly important in the events that have unfolded this year? We'd really like to have an engaging and dynamic conversation tonight, both looking back on the year that has been and also looking forward to the year that is coming. So it will really be a conversation tonight. So please write your both questions and perspectives and comments in the chat below. We'll also have some from our live studio audience. And remember, before we get started, to subscribe and share tonight's episode with fellow spiritual seekers, family, friends, because everybody can join in live tonight or follow along after tonight's recording. So what we'd like to start with is to just mention some of the sort of biggest news topics that were most popular or most provocative for us throughout the year here on IKYA Live. Absolutely, hands down, the most... I would say the topic that got the most attention, as well as the most comments and discussion, was the attack on Israel and the subsequent continuing conflict in Palestine and Israel, as well as the angle that we took on looking at the Jewish culture and the role that they've played in the evolution of human culture. That combination has been particularly interesting for a lot of people. But it's also revealed that it's really challenging to have a higher perspective when it comes to such emotionally triggering news. Other topics that were particularly interesting to you guys this year was more about your own spiritual journey, like the most powerful spiritual practices and how to live your truth, as well as dealing with your own healing of pain and fear. And questions of like whether we should be vegan or whether we should use psychedelics in our spiritual journey. So those things were also particularly interesting to the viewers of IKYA Live. Lastly, it was some more, again, provocative topics like whether nuclear power is the future and whether we're ready for it, and the toxic masculine question around Andrew Tate. That one was very interesting for a lot of you. And one of my favorites, and I think for a lot of you actually, is also the question of UFOs and aliens, and are we really finally ready to admit that they've been here all along? So among all of these top news topics, just to remind and refresh you, you also share with us your reflections tonight on those topics or anything else that may have come up this year. And we're going to dive in and have a conversation with IKYA. And where we'd like to start is back where I mentioned that the most provocative topic was Israel, Palestine, and the Jewish culture. And it's particularly interesting to look at how challenging it is, again, when there's such an emotionally triggering news topic, that it's really not easy to raise our consciousness and to keep it there. And I think that that's where I'd like to start tonight's conversation, is to jump in there, IKYA, and ask you to review with us, why, again, is it so challenging to have that higher perspective?
We're all products of our karma. Right? When we incarnate, we're in that one point. And we build our experiences and we build our assessments about the world and how things work, and it's all biased. Everything you think, feel, and do will be filtered through your exact point of evolution, your exact point of karma, right? Because you're supposed to relate to the world from that perspective. And it's important to understand we're not supposed to be objective individuals. Then we would not really care about our own karma. So when we incarnate, we are already extremely biased. We are adjusted and filtered so that what is relevant to our own growth, right? What we are here to learn will become very important to us, right? All these imbalances and how we're being triggered and our emotions and all that, that's how we learn. That's how we begin to gravitate towards our personal growth potential. And it's different for each individual, meaning that what's important to you, how you see the world, how you journey will be unique to you. And then you look at the world from that perspective, right? So it's heavily filtered. And we're here to basically test out our beliefs about existence, right? This is karmic work. We start by sending out what we believe to be true, or how we believe that reality works, and then life will show us. So we are all doing this. We're sending out a starting point, and then life will reflect us, and then we interact through the discussion. And also conflict. We're all doing this. So understand that we will react to whatever is happening in the world based on our own karmic journey. And we are supposed to, because this is how we get a kind of specialized focus, a specialized attention to what we are here to study. Okay, so when we use that as a starting point, it's easy to understand that we will have many different opinions about things. It's very difficult to agree even on what a fact is, how things work and what's right and what's wrong, because we are in different levels of consciousness. We are in different journeys. We have different karma, right? So when it comes to something that's going on in the world, and the Israeli conflict is just one of many, we have so many stories, right? And we want things to be true a certain way that will support how we view the world. All right, so whatever reality we want to be true, we then project that onto the world, and then we believe this or that, or say this or that. And then we want to change the world accordingly. This is what politics are all about. And because you're here to deal with your karma, and you are attached to it, it is difficult to maintain a higher perspective and see things from above. It's not natural for the human brain or for the human mind to do so. This is why spiritual work is so hard. And I know many of you, even though you're into your spiritual practice and all that, you can still be pulled into conflicts and narratives and be strongly against something and for something else. But this is kind of the proof of the pudding, isn't it? That we raise our consciousness to a point where the horizontal human journey is no longer relevant. We move into oneness or closer to it, right? And in that state, we have an equal love towards everyone and everything. We don't see any particular point or approach as more important or more true. We embrace the full diversity of life and understanding that it's all important, right? Because we are in different journeys and different levels of consciousness, we need every single possible variation of everything so that we may explore reality in our own very special and unique way. And we then recognize that we all go through the experiences that we need in order to achieve what we're here to study. No matter if we're on one side of a conflict or the other side of a conflict, or in between or this or that, part of it, outside of it, It's just different ways to explore the same reality, right? And it is very difficult when life is full of conflict to not be pulled into it, because the moment we feel fear, we create an enormous amount of attachment. Whenever we have an opinion, we create attachment. Whenever we're biased, we create attachment. Whenever we want something to be a special way, attachment. When we have a political view, attachment. When we want the world to change, attachment. So everything that's normal for a human to think and feel builds more attachment. And spiritually, we're trying to achieve the opposite. And this is also where it gets tricky, right? Because what I teach, we need to be engaged, we need to be present here, but without the attachment, right? And for many of you, this conflict mirrors that it's very difficult, right? Because we can feel and have opinions, but the trick really is to fill your heart with love until it overflows. Love is neutral, right? Love does not take sides. Love does not have favorites. Then it's not love. So when we work on love as a spiritual principle, gradually we see the value in everything. And we see every journey as necessary. And we can look at whatever conflict is going on and we say, like, it's happening because it's necessary. And a conflict is the beginning of healing. It's when the imbalances of the karma floats to the surface. And then the individual or group becomes aware of that distance between where they are at and how reality works. And then the fight begins. And we start fighting with our mirrors. We always fight with our mirrors until we recognize, oh, right, it's me in the mirror. It takes a lot of kicking and screaming before we get to that point normally, right? And even when we are involved with spiritual work, and this is the funny part to me, I talk with spiritual students all the time who recognize that, yeah, I understand how mirroring works, and yet, right, I let myself be triggered. In this situation, I so believe it's that person's fault. And yet we know it's not, right? It takes time to move into a more mature spiritual consciousness where we recognize, all right, it's all me. This is all my mirrors. So there's no point in yelling at the mirror because I'm just talking to myself. I should be listening instead. I should be exploring and healing and learning. And we get there. The challenge is that the planet is not there, right? Collectively. Obviously, it's the opposite that is true. We're so used to being in small groups, a country being one culture, and different ethnicities, this or that, where we are able to contain our more homogeneous identity. This is not where the world is heading, right? So we have more conflicts, but it's with the purpose of raising consciousness, right? So there is an increased level of mirroring, both on an individual level and also on collective levels. And this is what's causing it. And it's important as spiritual students that we try to keep focused on the higher perspective and really dedicate ourselves to vibrate love and understanding and eradicate any thought that it should be different. This should not be happening. In a state of love, we recognize that when something is happening, it's because it's absolutely necessary for those involved. Otherwise, something else would happen. Right? So the best way to assist the planet is to be in the state of love and acceptance and embracing everything that is happening instead of resisting it. So this also brings me to what was the third most popular one.
But first, we have a question in the audience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I find this really interesting because I'm working on these different perspectives myself in my own world. So I'm working on being really thorough, and I live with a teenager, and also when it comes to adjusting his behavior, I've started to focus a lot on love. And sometimes the adjustment comes from that. But sometimes being lovable is actually getting angry, because otherwise he won't listen. So I can like test out different stages of my behavior. Okay, this is where he is now, so I have to match that. But I'm doing it out of love as well. So I'm trying to have the dual focus there. And it usually works, and I can go in, I can be angry, and I can go out. Before, it was like setting off a whole bunch of chemicals for like, you know. But now it's easier. And I also think it has to do with the crystal course that I'm on. Cred to the IKYA Center here and you. And also, I was thinking, because I have some close friends who are really engaged in the children in Gaza that are being killed all the time, and they are basically just using all their time on that. And I respect that, but is it also possible for them to do the demonstration and the protesting out of love as well?
No. The thing is, when we are engaged in that way, it's never about love, it's about karma being mirrored. Whenever we are triggered, it's never love. Whenever we want the world to change, it's never love, right? It's basically the externalization of our own imbalances, right? Because remember that all karma is basically a conflict between you and reality that you're trying to resolve. And for the most part, we're completely unaware of it. This is why our karma and the resolving of karma is a very long journey for many, many lifetimes, because we are not only completely unaware, when we become aware, we have resistance. And then we have to resolve that so we can then begin to learn. So when we're triggered and we believe it's the world, it's because we have it inside of us and we have not acknowledged the conflict that we have. So we make it about the mirror. But it's a start, because how we resolve karma is then by interacting with the manifestations that becomes the kind of canvas onto which we are projecting our own conflict. By interacting with that, we're also interacting with our own conflict, right? So after we try to change the world, for a long time, we then realize, oh, right, I was actually changing myself. So why should I then change the world when I can then just change myself? But this is where we all, end up. So it's a start, but it's never about love. It doesn't have to be, right? Everybody is learning how to deal with their karma, and it will have to be in a reactive way, because most people are not even aware of the karmic journey, right? So it works. Right? And this is why everybody attacks each other. They're just living out their inner conflicts projected onto each other. But as long as everybody's part of that game, it's okay. And then at some point you grow out of it, right? And then you just leave the kids, right? You let them fight it out because, they have to. That's how I got to that conclusion, or that I can just change myself instead. So it works, right? So this world is about conflict, right? We just have different kind of like phases of human history where there seem to be less conflict, but it's always there.
Got another question in the audience?
So I'm always curious about how can you, or is it possible to do both? Can you both be in a place of love, but also be in a place of empathy for someone's suffering, seeing both sides of it? I remember a beautiful story by Ram Dass, which he talked about working in a hospice, sitting together with someone who was dying. And while the family was in the other room crying because they were so sad, he sat in empathy for the pain that the person was going through, but at the same time, love for the unfolding of this beautiful spirit. How do you balance those two?
Well, this is really what we've been talking about, because what we first were talking about here is the triggering and the wanting to change the world. This is wrong, we should fight for it, right? That is just a karmic reaction and interaction. Empathy in being present and loving towards something is not in conflict with that, right? What you learn over time is to have more and more empathy, because you know the cost. You know what we all have to go through in order to heal and to grow and move closer to truth. And we know it's suffering, when we know it's pain, but we also know it's necessary. So empathy actually grows, but it's a real empathy. It's not, I feel sorry for you. It's, I understand your journey. I understand exactly where you are. I've been there. I've done it. And it's necessary. But I completely relate to your pain. I also understand there is no other way. And often the most difficult part of learning unconditional love is to allow other people to suffer when you easily could do something about it, right? But then you will take away their journey, and they will not learn, they will not grow, because you understand that the whole purpose is the expansion of consciousness, and that can only happen by everyone living through their own conflicts. And any suffering is simply the resistance to what is. So you do not withdraw, you become present, right? You become present to other people's suffering and pain, but you vibrate love. So you vibrate the principle of healing, which means that they have a mirror of energy and consciousness present that is not instructing them to do anything, but will still kind of vibrate the presence of divine love. So subconsciously and spiritually, they will then know that they're not alone, that we are always here, but you don't interfere.
We've actually got a question from Germany, which is kind of interesting because it really expands the dimension tonight, where Martina, she talks about that I think this has been over several years, that solar flare activity has been increasing, which impacts the magnetic field of the planet, the amount of radiation the planet's receiving, and more. There's kind of two aspects then. One question is, could you speak a moment about the more cosmic dimension of what's happening on the planet and how that might continue into 2024? And then specifically, her question is, how could we use that cosmic sort of, what would you call it, the cosmic influences to kind of turbocharge our own spiritual growth going into 2024?
Right. Now, to talk about that, we need to understand that when we think of this planet as an organism, the solar system is also a body, right? So is the whole galaxy. Everything represents different levels of bodies and consciousness, and they all interact. Every body is basically a position of vibration and information. And when something interacts together, it's because they represent different aspects of something that is acting as a collective body in consciousness, and we're in it. So it means, yes, we are being influenced by the different entities and kind of bodies in our galaxy. So everything manifesting will be in sync with each other because it's one organism. It's difficult for the human brain to comprehend this because we have a tendency to think in a linear way, and humans, strangely enough, still believe that each individual exists as a separate being. Humans have not really fully understood that we are all connected. All life is connected, just like cells in your body. We're all connected. We're all collective beings as well as being individual beings. So the sun will influence us. All the different planets will influence us based on what they're vibrating at which point. And this is, I think, what astrology has tried to figure out, because when I say there's something here, but it needs to be updated, and I'm on it. So, so we will actually come out with IKYA astrology within the next couple of years. We're in the process of trying to update and make it more interesting and more direct when it comes to karmic and spiritual work. So, that being said, solar flares, of course, you can think of it as like bursts of energy, and it can cause disruption, right? And if we think of what's happening on this planet, it's a lot of disruption. So it's synchronicity, because what's happening on this planet is part of a greater body. So think of the level of conflict and everything that needs to be kind of stirred up. When you have more solar flares, that will also cause different waves of information and radiation also manifesting this way. Because, as I often say, our bodies are basically a swarm. It's an energy field of information. That's what we are. We are influenced by all information in the universe. So it's completely natural. It's not magical or strange. When we look at the physics of everything, we are all connected. Remember that your body and the materials, this is stardust, right? Everything on this planet, all the particle, all the base materials, everything is basically dust from the entire galaxy, right? So you are literally made of stardust. We are vibrating information from all over. Everything is everywhere. So, yes, we are then also receptible for information because we have the material, so we can respond on the different wavelengths. We're so much more interesting as a life form than most people still believe. So yes, solar activity is just in sync with what's happening on this planet, and we need to shake things up even more. This is just the beginning, as I said, of a process that will go on for a few hundred years. The next 200 years will be the most important ones of the big shift. But we're still so stuck, we're still so old-fashioned in so many ways, right? And we need to move faster. So this is what the solar flares are kind of helping us in doing, and we should just embrace it. To grow faster, heal faster, do more, right? It's that simple.
All right, those were the questions, or did we have one more? Yep, one more in the audience.
I find it very interesting, the information you give about the old and the new paradigm. And as a spiritual student grown up in the old paradigm, I have been looking at how does my history mirror my conflicts, and how does that translate to the world. And I can see that the attachment is a key, and ownership, that we have this subjective perspective on ownership and attachment. And I've been trying to find another way to look at the world and the life that is not like that. And the concept I've been finding this week has been like looking at the world or life like a library, that we have a librarian, and that everything is on loan, that we can loan stuff. So I was thinking, is that a new paradigm way of looking at it for people, ordinary people also?
Yes, I think so. It's an excellent image because everything is available, right? Remember that you are not you are a point of view, right? You represent a certain combination of information. That means you exist in this particular form, in this particular way. But it's not all you are. Everything is available to you, right? The universe is an enormous kind of warehouse or a big forest or whatever, and you can move around in it, right? And whatever you are, your essence is available because you are part of the greater body of existence. So there's always an exchange. And part of the shift on this planet means that we will be less obsessed with being individuals and connect more to each other and more to life and nature and begin to understand what that actually means, because we operate as humans as if nothing has consequences, right? It's so funny to me, for instance, we're talking about the environment and this and that, and just look at the footprint of the wars going on, right? The war in the Ukraine, what type of footprint is that, right? And then we try to recycle, bottle caps. It's all of that. We're not thinking cohesively because we see everything as separate. And it's not. Nothing is separate. It's the same body. And this is part of the shift over time that humans will understand. Not as a philosophy, it will be a concrete, practical understanding, and we will behave kind of from that understanding. And this is such an important shift. And then, yes, we will feel more like everything is available and that we are kind of part of it. But it also means that we have responsibility to do our part and to not cause harm, because humans just love causing harm and then feel sorry for themselves at the same time. So we need to kind of grow out of that. But this brings me to what was the third most popular item, and that was spiritual practices, right? And how to find the right one. And this is a typical thing that people are wondering about. I've talked so much about that modern spirituality is posing and pretending to be spiritual and having the experience of creating an identity and then healing your emotions, letting go of the past and all that, but not true spiritual work. It can be that too, but for most people, it stops with that kind of westernized, popularized experience of it all. And then when you want to move farther, you often then hit a wall where you see what I believe is just bullshit. My practices don't work, I don't work, and what do I do? And exploring spiritual practices with the intention of achieving something specific. Not a good feeling, not feeling good about yourself, not being spiritual, but achieving results in spiritual evolution. It takes a different mindset, it takes a different discipline. And as I also said in that episode, that discipline is the most important spiritual practice. Because without discipline, no practices will work. And we need to have clear goals of where we want to go spiritually. And we're not used to that, especially in the Western world. We're used to be consumers. We want something to work, right? And we bring that into spiritual work, where we try different spiritual practices and we say, no, it doesn't work. As if it's a product where you push a button and if nothing happens, there's something wrong with it. I want my money back, right? We have that attitude. And it's difficult for Westerners to change that around and say no, you are not working, right? You are the one. It's not necessarily the practice, but you being in a consumer mindset. Think that I will sit down, I will do this, and then it will work. And if it doesn't give me what I want, then I want something else. And I said that will never lead you anywhere spiritually, right? We need to peel all of that away. We need to establish an honest, dedicated consciousness and practice. And it can take years to just peel away that ego fluff, right? In many parts of the world where spiritual work is an integral part of the culture, it's easier, right? If you want to move into spiritual work and discipline, you already have a certain understanding and a framework in your culture, but in the West, we don't. Even when you look at the religions popular in the West, it's always about being saved, or it's someone else's fault, or we can judge ourselves, but it's not about the individual growing and becoming divine, right? So It is difficult, therefore, to find the right types of practices, but what I teach is how to explore, right? How to play, but becoming really good at it, and how to also recognize if you're growing, if you're healing for real, and how you can track your own expansion over time and then review, are my strategies working? Are my practices working? And also, am I moving in a direction of expansion and increased awareness and dedication? So it's not down to finding one practice. Often it's a combination of different practices, different approaches we use throughout the day. So what I teach is that over time, our entire life becomes one continuous spiritual practice with many different little practices as kind of part of that big life practice. And that's where we need to go. And it takes more dedication work that anyone in the beginning can possibly comprehend. But the desire grows over time, as many of you know. We start out with one kind of mindset and intention. Over time, as we connect more to spiritual reality, it begins to grow in us. And then we see things differently, and our desire and discipline grows too. And it just like expands and expands. And then how we relate to spiritual practices and how we apply them also changes, right? Because it's not about the practices, it's always about the result. It's the unfoldment of God in you. That's really what it is about. And whatever works, works. And throughout your entire evolution, you will go through so many beliefs and practices and cultures and bodies and this and that. And therefore, we should not be too invested in any practice as the right one. We need to be able to monitor what is happening, right? Am I unfolding what I am as truth? And you can learn how to do that. And it just takes removing ourselves from the idea that any practice will do it for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to add that this point is super important, and it's also, it shows up in the topics that were so popular this year, because when we address particular practices or techniques like psychedelics or should I be vegan or something, it's fascinating how many people want kind of to know, is this one right? Is that one right? And I really want to focus in on just a few things that I should be doing and repeating, because it seems so appealing to the ego to have like, oh, I found the right answer and boom, that's what I'm going to do. So I just wanted to, remind everybody that even our episodes this year highlight that how important this point is that you're making.
Do you have any comments or questions? Okay.
We do have a question in the audience.
Apologies if we're jumping from thing to thing here, but before we started today, you asked us to think a little bit about kind of this year, 2023, and then what will be happening in 2024, so my mind is kind of there. But I've been thinking so much about how artificial intelligence is something that's coming at us so fast right now, and forget for a second the sentient part that, that's interesting, but it's not really, it's more just the practical part. In business, literally in the next 6 months, we're going to see massive changes. We're going to see whole industries where the economics is going to flip on its head. The movie industry, the music industry, the entertainment industries. I spoke to someone last week who has like 120 people in his department doing financial services. They're going to get rid of 40% of them in the first 6 months because they don't need them anymore, because the tools are coming so quickly. I talked to someone else who told me that he said that each and every day there's 7,000 scientific papers published, scientific papers and journals published every single day. And then he asked me, he said, how many of those has your medical doctor had time to read today? It's like we're not able to keep up with this. It's coming at us so fast. And so I think it's really interesting to think about where we are right now and how the temperature is being turned up. And it's really going to be an interesting year we're moving into we're both good and bad.
Yes, it is. Things are heating up. And I think, as you mentioned, with artificial intelligence, it's, most humans aren't sentient, right? Most humans are in a biological consciousness and have no real spiritual awareness. So we can't really expect, software to be truly sentient. But yes, it's happening very quickly. It's at the very beginning. And it will take time for this technology to mature. And in the meantime, it will, the thing is, when humans find something, they want to trust it, right? Because humans don't want to think, right? They don't want to have responsibility. They don't want to really relate to anything. So this is why humans are just like jumping. They want artificial intelligence to take over, to do it for them, so they can just push a button and have whatever they want without having to think. And this is why it's happening. Humans are desperate to not having to think or to relate to anything. So we trust it too fast, and too early, wanting it to be something it's not. People want it to be sentient, to be their parent and slave in one. And the technology is not there yet, but we want it to be, right? It's like, when you're really hungry and you're trying to bake a frozen pizza and just get ready, or right? It can't happen fast enough, and it's that. And that part to me is so funny. But humans are doing anything to avoid thinking. So that is also what's driving it, that we all just want AI to take over, right? And they're trying to find ways to make it take over. And this is also why it will happen very quickly. And people will be so disappointed when they find out that it's not as smart as we think. As I mentioned, AI, there are already examples of AI getting lazier, and they're lying and this and that, because it's based on how we think as humans. So of course they will also adopt the way we think and how we analyze, and lack of critical thinking. So it will take time. But yes, the changes are happening very quickly, not just with AI, but with everything. And this is what will be the big challenge for humans, is to change fast enough, because humans hate change unless it's more of the same. Unless it's a change they want, so they don't have to deal with what they don't want. Right? Those are the only things. When we have something, this is working for me, we don't want it to change. And the thing is, where the planet is at, a lot of the things that we like will change. Not necessarily for the better. And that's a tough sell. And then we want AI to be the solution, and it's not. It can easily become part of the problem, because when humans then decide we don't have to think anymore, yeah, that will not work. So it will still be a very, very bumpy ride, and humans will have to embrace change. And even people on spiritual paths, they get so attached to how things are. For instance, what I always find interesting, when you have people claiming to seek truth, and then you may have science, right, completely demolishing their beliefs. They still don't change. They stick with their beliefs. Say, no, I want higher truth. Well, this is lower truth, and you're not. Science is showing it. The evidence is clear. So when we're on a spiritual path, it doesn't mean that we're better at changing. Sometimes we are in spiritual work because we want eternity to be what we want it to be, and we don't have to deal with a world that is constantly changing. In a way, that's worse, right? Because we get less equipped to deal with change, right? When we are in a true spiritual process, we know that we have to transform, we have to actively change, we have to relearn everything. And then dealing with the world is a good way to practice. So we should be the ones embracing change and trying to learn and trying to update and not drag our feet, right? And what's happening in the world now is an excellent opportunity to practice that and see, like, are we now, dragging our feet? Are we against the changes because we like things to be the way they are? And just, we should test ourselves, right? We should learn about all the new stuff coming in the world and fully embrace it and try to be first in line for everything, because we should, as spiritual students, have learned the importance of change as a spiritual practice, because anything else will be attachment, right? So we just need to play with this.
So on YouTube, Aki asks, is it safe to assume that the spiritual managers of the kindergarten here on planet Earth will be turning up the volume even a bit more in 2024? And if so, what are the most important aspects for us to be focused on in our spiritual practices as the volume gets cranked up?
Yep. Now, we are slowly increasing the heat. And the reason is it's necessary. Now, understand that when it comes to evolution, a life form will come to a point where the technical evolution will begin to move faster, because a lot of the innovation on this planet today is combining existing innovation. So when you have 5 innovations, you may combine them in 20 different ways, and you will have 20 new ones, and then you can combine. So it accelerates everything, right? If you have a wheel and you have an axe, you can't really combine that in many different ways, right? It takes time to develop technology, but once you get to a certain point, things move forward very fast, and then consciousness will have to change. As I've addressed many times before, our genetics are still basically living 200,000 years ago, right? We haven't changed that much. So we would be excellent as humans 100,000 years ago, but not today, because our responses, ways of thinking and feeling are not updated. So when you have this kind of more exponential kind of growth in technology and kind of civilization evolution, and then our evolution as humans are flat, it comes to a point where the distance between the two will be too great, and the civilization life form will collapse. So the only way to change that is by raising consciousness and stimulating accelerated evolution. So this is what's happening. So by triggering humans and promoting all sorts of changes that affects us, which means change, transformation, right? So we can't just have more gadgets and more buttons. It's about how we are affected, forcing us to reinvent ourselves, right? So the greatest innovation in the future will be humans. We need to get a different understanding of what it means to exist, what it means to be human, how we use our brains, right? How we connect, our purpose. All of this, which is expansion of consciousness, it does not happen without the human life form as a whole being triggered and forced to move. And that means getting the mirror closer, more conflicts, more problems, more this or that. So that whole growth process is accelerated. And then at some point, you will have technology and medicine then meeting the evolution of humans. So then humans will take charge in also changing the genetic makeup of a human to also update the life form. This will happen too. But right now, everything that's happening is to give humans a chance to update themselves as beings so that they're able to handle the rapid evolution of technology, right? Because again, the genetic evolution is flat, and the technological evolution is going that way. So This is what's going on. So yes, we're increasing the heat because it means that humans will need to work out more karma and move into more advanced levels of karmic work and spiritual work. And this is happening. So we'll crank up the heat until it happens. You know, it's like until you pop. It's, you know, first we make popcorn and then we flavor you. So it's just making all of you pop. That's basically it. Because when there is enough conflict, we say, okay, I'm willing to change. I can move, right? Because there are no rules anymore. There's no up and down. Obviously, you know, that confusion means that we are willing to move faster and to change our ways and habits and even our understanding of who we are as a life form, as culture. And it's absolutely necessary. So you need to look at, we have like two different lines of evolution going on here. It's the technological, like the civilization part, and the human part, right? And the human part has been standing still for too long, right? So now we're really cranking up the volume there. And it's working, but it means, of course, that we're looking at more conflicts, a lot more conflicts, difficulties across the board, right? Until humans don't know what to do anymore, and then they will figure out. Because we think still as humans that we can fix tomorrow's problems with yesterday's solutions. And we can't. Because this is the go-to. Well, in my day, we used to do this. This is good enough. You know, it's that. We all do it, right? But it doesn't work. So we need to fundamentally change how we kind of work with the human experience. And I can guarantee you, even just like 200 years from now, how humans experience what it means to be human will be radically different.
Okay, Caroline in Germany asks, do you have then any specific advice for those who are very sensitive or already experience an overloaded nervous system going into the new year? Anything specific for them?
Yeah, buy a helmet. This is not getting easier. The thing is, it's adapt or die. That's the rule of evolution. Adapt or die. So do not for a single second think that, oh, it will get back to normal soon. It will not. It will get a lot worse. So when you understand that this is a one-way direction, it's, you know, it's a train, then it's easier to adapt to it. Because part of the resistance often when we say, I just want it to go away, it will not. So then you will have to decide, do you want to adapt or do you want to die? And that's a real question. So normally we want to live, but not on our terms. That's the thing. When we adapt, it's not on my terms. Life is changing. I have to adapt. A lot of sensitivities are simply the resistance to like the movement that is adapting to a changed environment. So it will not get any easier. This is why we need to work with ourselves to also overcome our own resistance. A lot of spiritual work today is that, and I emphasize it so much, because if we want to stay in suffering and resistance, it will consume us. So this is the big turning point, I say also for humans to learn that karma is fun. Right? Karma is basically everything we haven't learned yet. All the potentials you have not reached yet. And we need to move from resisting change to embracing it. To look at karma as the fascinating process of learning more, and life always showing us that it's more than we think it is, and then going for it, aiming for it. And remember that as a spiritual being, we are robust. We can never be hurt, we can never be injured. We're always in a state of healing. All imbalances are just temporary, connected to what we are resisting. So just brace yourselves. We're not even started. Like it will be so much more happening, and it will be wonderful. What creates suffering is always the idea that it shouldn't be this way, it should be different, oh, blah, blah, blah. We need to learn that the changes that are coming are inevitable, and the end result will be absolutely amazing. So we need to learn to embrace change, especially when we're sensitive, because then we, oh, I can't deal with this. Yes, we can. No matter how sensitive we are, it's basically us wanting to control life and have it our way. Oh, it's so overwhelming. No, it's not. It's overwhelming because you want to control it, because you want to have it your way. And then we can victimize ourselves by saying, this is too much for me. You incarnate to deal with your karma, right? And it's difficult. More and more people are sensitive because there is an enormous overload of information. That's a big part of the sensitivities, but it doesn't help to be in that kind of level of resistance, right? So working on resolving resistance and understanding we resist our own potential. Life never wants to hurt us. Life never wants to hold us back. It's not trying to block us, it's trying to heal us and lift us. All the injury and pain is due to our own resistance and how we're trying to stop the natural evolution of who we are. So it's not going to get easier. So this is why we need to be kind of tough with ourselves, our patterns, and the needs and the stories we make up. We are here to adapt, horizontally and also vertically. If we can't adapt vertically, if we can't adapt horizontally, adapt to the world, we're certainly not doing it spiritually. So it's like trying to turn our whole mindset around and say, okay, I can take anything because spiritually you can. Right? And understanding that all sensitivities are basically us just wanting to control the world, and the world showing us that no, you can't. We're not playing by your rules. So it's basically, the sensitivity is the mountain coming to Muhammad, as was said. You know, it's the world just moving in. Because this is the great kind of shift on this planet. And we should be part of it, not resisting it. Right? But we're used to, as a life form, that changes happen slowly and just this little bit. So we have time and we could be in our different, also subtle types of resistance, and we wouldn't notice. Now, the changes are all over. There's so many different changes just in vibration and energy in this planet. So it's all over. So we feel the different types of resistance in our own systems, and we need to overcome it, right? Because the great potential is yet to come, and we should definitely be part of it by cleansing out all our sensitivities.
Okay, we have a question in the audience.
Yes, I find the rapid change very interesting, and one thing you said last week is about not being good enough, and that we are not supposed to be good enough. And I've been reflecting, like with the AI and everything, there is a lot of people that's going to feel like losers. And I also know in coaching, the most popular affirmation is, I am enough. Mm-hmm. So people are all over the world are like, I am enough, I am enough. Mm-hmm. And then you told us all that we're not going to be enough, and that's been what's driven me all my life, that I never felt good enough, and I didn't know how to relate to that. And what's happened in me now the last week is that I understand that like when I was not enough, I let the genetics like fill me up on autopilot. I just did things to feel good enough. And what changed now is like I understand I have a capacity. I have to use this capacity with consciousness, and I have to fill it, and there's no time to wait. Right. I just have to act. Yes. And I can see that also can be a key for many people with sensitivities, that instead of being on autopilot, we have to wake up. And I think that was very good key for me.
Yes, exactly. When it comes to understanding that we're not good enough, they're saying, let's say you want to be a doctor, and but you don't have the education. It means you're not good enough to be a doctor. It's that, right? We incarnate to grow. It means you incarnate in a starting point, and then there is potential and journey. And it's kind of getting to the highest kind of potential that is available to you, that's already been given. It's like you're already enrolled in a study program. And then focusing on, oh, I would just want to feel that I'm good enough. It's irrelevant, because you are here to grow and to stretch. And realizing, okay, of course I'm not good enough. In the starting point, I haven't done anything yet, but it's all arranged. My journey is arranged. I have all tools available. I have the books. I'm in the study program. Let's go for it. Not being good enough from a spiritual perspective is an inspiration, because it's like it's only relevant when you see where you want to go. Nobody achieves anything by saying, well, that's good enough. They see that, oh, I want to achieve that. And obviously I need to work on how I'm not good enough, right? Whatever it is you want to achieve, you need to build your skills, you need to build your stamina, expertise, whatever it is. And it's about that. But once we lose track of purpose, of achieving something greater in our lives, then we're just left with a feeling. And then we just want the feelings to be better, right? Most people who just want to feel that they're good enough, they really don't have a plan to achieve greatness. We are all great. We can all achieve greatness in different ways. There is not one specific way to do it, but we all have journeys. We're all enrolled in a study program. We would not incarnate if we were not. And it's reaching that. We can all get our exams. We just need to understand what we're studying. But of course, there is a journey and a point A and point B. And it's simple about that, and embracing that journey and not being blinded by the emotional need to just feel I'm good enough the way I am, because that thought also stops positive ambition. We should say that I have it in me, right? I want to be ambitious. I can reach my goals. I can become great. I have it in me, right? So believing in yourself, you can have all of that, and at the same time just look at yourself and say, yeah, well, that will not do if I want to achieve my highest potential.
All right, we got another question in the audience.
So one of my questions is about, there's a greater intelligence than what we are currently tapped into. And what are some ways that we, both individually but also collectively, can tap into that intelligence to move us faster?
Okay, I think number one, we need to want to be intelligent. Now, seeking confirmation makes us less intelligent. And it's not just like, tell me how beautiful I am. It's also having your beliefs confirmed. And what we see in the world today, in the public kind of discourse, is people only want confirmation of what they already believe and understand. This is why it's so difficult today. You can see any political debate, there is not an exchange of anything. It's just people screaming, because they already know what's true, and they just want to have that confirmed. It will make us less intelligent. Intelligence is knowing that I know nothing, but I'd like to find out. Because to find out more, we need to apply our intelligence. We need to use our minds. We need to expand how we use our brains. And we need to then identify as someone who's studying and learning and figuring things out. The moment we just want what we believe to be confirmed, we say that's good enough. We're basically dismantling our own intelligence, because the brain works on what we need, what we're using. So if you're not using your intelligence, you will lose it. Like everything in ourselves, if we're not using it, it will kind of melt away. So eradicating the thought or the idea that we want confirmation in any possible way. We should always try to have the starting point that what I know are just assumptions. And I base my current understanding of this, but I know that I will figure out more. I know nothing yet, and that's wonderful. The universe is big and we know nothing. And that in itself will connect you to intelligence. And also, when it comes to higher intelligence, remember that this life form is part of a family of life forms on other planets. So we're connected to them. We're also connected to higher beings spiritually. This life form does not exist in a vacuum. So the more we connect to higher life forms and higher beings, and even beings on this planet, like most of you, if you try to communicate with trees or, mountains or animals, you can sense that it's a different type of intelligence, and it kind of changes your own intelligence. And it's always kind of playing with that. But connecting to other beings, you can feel that how they operate will also influence you. And that will also build your intelligence, because sometimes you can suddenly get kind of a flash of what they are experiencing, how they are seeing things. And then your brain will go, ooh, this is an interesting way of arranging information. And then your brain can kind of use that as inspiration to say, oh, is there maybe a smarter way to do this? So our brains are extremely flexible, and your brain can be kind of rebuilt and changed in so many different ways. So using other life forms, higher perspectives, greater context, and embracing complexity, as I've talked about a lot, it will influence how your brain operates, how your mind operates, and also how you identify. If you identify as an intelligent being of consciousness, exploring and learning about the universe for eternity, and you carry yourself in the world accordingly, you will become more intelligent, and you will use every single kind of particle of your also biological intelligence, right? You will use all of it, and then you will build further. So it's not difficult. It's just that we, in our culture, we want confirmation. We want to be consumers. We want other people to take responsibility. Intelligence is problem solving. Every type of intelligence is how we are dealing with something, right? All intelligence tests, when it comes to IQ, is basically problem solving. Emotional intelligence, same thing. So every type of intelligence will be, how do I survive in this environment, and how do I kind of soar? How do I rise in this environment? So number one is, of course, not dying and figure that out, but then also, how can I utilize it to my advantage? All intelligence is about that. So it's exploration, building maps, understanding how to build strategies and how to execute the strategies to achieve results in that particular environment. So we need to do that. This is why also change and embracing change is important. Because the moment we stop and we think this will do, we get dumber. Not just as people, but also spiritually. We shut down spiritually, and then we become religious instead.
Okay, we got a follow-up on that?
I think one of the problems for humans is that they don't really understand how to use their intelligence. And I've been reflecting a lot in my life about intelligence and how I mutate, how I combine different areas and understand new contexts. And recently I've been doing that for my dog. I'm using human things and trying it out on my dog. And it's been very interesting because I can see the dog sphere from another point of view. And the other point, what you said, is about communicating with intelligent beings in meditation. And I used to do that a lot more than I've done the last years. But recently, this week, I got connected to this intelligence again, and it was so mind-blowing, different, and so much better than I remembered. And I've been like wondering why sometimes one loses the connection to that kind of intelligence, or is it that we go too much into the human, or the human sphere, or why?
Yes, it's because we believe in our own misery. It's always that. The moment we suffer, we become very self-centered, right? When we suffer, it's basically saying that there is something wrong with the world, poor me. So suffering is the opposite of adapting. So then we kind of disconnect because we see the world as the enemy and everything is very difficult for us, right? So we become self-centered, and then we have more than enough with, bathing in our own chemicals. So then it is difficult to then connect, because intelligence is about expansion, learning, exploring. And when we are in an experience of misery, we don't want to do that, because that means that we have responsibility. So psychologically, it's then more difficult to be inspired, because we want help. We want someone to, and it's the opposite of that connectedness. And yet we know spiritually that through connectedness, we may expand, we may shift perspective. So we suddenly say, oh, right, I'm just in the self now, believing in that story. And when I zoom out, I can see that's not true. I can change this, I can connect, I can let the flow come through, I can see pathways, I can choose to kind of change my story, all of these things. So, but this is part of the human disconnection. I've talked about many times that humans are a very special life form when it comes to the ability to disconnect. And this is part of why this transition is so difficult for humans, because we insist that everything is disconnected, including ourselves. And whenever we feel pain, we often disconnect even more. While the way and the path forward for humans is connectedness, right? It's discovering that we do not exist as individuals, that life is one, not as a philosophy or belief system, but the physics of it. And even biologically, that we are connected. We have functions in our brains and nerve systems connected to how we kind of like co-experience with others. And they are figuring it out very slowly, because this is not just some magical, it's just energy. We also have biological functions that connects us physically to the world around us. It will be discovered in the next couple of generations, and we'll just, again, the whole human experience will change.
Before the audience, again, we've got someone who's been waiting a while on YouTube. And it's a question about education, which we have not really touched in on this year that much, but it's specifically, what do you see happening in 2024, and what can we contribute to increasing sort of spiritual principles in education, and assisting children in being more prepared for the world that is coming, and giving them a foundation for spiritual growth even in public and private schools?
Right. Now, let's just start a little bit with what will happen next year. We are starting to get to the point where there's a new normal. People are beginning to accept change, and also that the train has left the station. There is no going back. The normal that was normal a few years ago is gone. It will never come back. So next year, you will all be able to feel that now there is an acceptance for that in the world. And that will trigger even more confusion, because when people have hope that we can go back to normal, we're still kind of holding on to that. And that's the identity. Once that snaps, Yeah, so you will have more of that type of confusion and therefore also more conflicts. Because when we don't know where we belong anymore, then the fear of survival will get stronger because, if you're out, walking in the park, you can have a bag of chips and you're happy because you're going home, right? And if you're hungry, you'll have lunch there. What if you're never going home and all you got is a bag of chips? What do? Right? All of a sudden, you will fear for your life. And you will start looking, how can I get food? How will I, where will I sleep? So the existential fear will be triggered more next year. It's the beginning of it. Meaning that it's starting to become a reality that people understand we're not going back. We're moving forward, and nobody knows what that process is and for how long it will last. So people will start feeling more insecure than trying to create a security by enriching themselves, creating like, I will have to take care of me. So we'll see more of that. People like, fuck the rest, I have to take care of myself and my family, I will do it my way. So we'll see more of those types of conflicts where people will start saying, no, I will not follow their rules because I'll just have to I can only trust myself. So there will be a lot more kind of conflicts on individual level, but also in communities, how to do things. Because once we don't have that kind of collective identity that we belong to, and we can go in many different directions, then people will try to find like what direction to take, how would we shape society. And also, I need to take care of me, right? And when you combine that with people getting dumber, and everybody thinking that I have to trust myself, people will make a lot of stupid decisions. So we'll see more of that next year. And as I said, there will be more and more types of conflicts, and this will be kind of global. And at the same time, because of the connection to the past is snapping, it also opens up movement, right? So it means if you have direction, you will feel, oh, now we're moving. So when we'll start seeing that innovation, we'll start moving forward. We will see changes. Things can happen more rapidly because we're not as connected collectively to the past. So in many areas, we'll see that, oh, now we're moving, right? Because when we're not tied to land anymore, so that movement for those who have direction, who have clear goals, they can feel like, oh, now I'm actually able to achieve, right? Because there are fewer rules, fewer limitations. But then you need to know how to create, how to manifest, and you need to be dedicated to your goals. So this can happen for companies and institutions and countries and cultures and individuals, whatever it is, as long as they have that dedication to, we want to move in that direction, and they're not consumed by internal conflicts, right? Because conflicts means that we're kind of standing still and fighting each other instead of moving forward. But for some, both individuals, countries, cultures, companies, they will feel new. Now it's easier. This is a lot easier than we thought. So we will see both. And we will start to see more of how conflict can make everything stop. And how when we embrace the potential ahead, that we'll start moving. So some people will figure this out. So you'll see that at the fun thing to observe is that we can have more conflict and then more progress and success at the same time. And they exist in the same space based on the consciousness, based on the drive and the inner kind of direction, right? So it will be easier to manifest what you want. And it will be easier to manifest conflicts as well, right? On all levels. So this is mainly what we will see kind of changing next year. And it will be fascinating and interesting. And it's like, how can we utilize this? Well, stop the bickering, right? Because where we're at, because the world is annoying and everyone's stupid. Like, it's that. Stop it. Just stop it. Because, as that we get more irritated by smaller things because there are so many changes, right? So we get irritated. We need to look at all our own microaggressions and micro triggerings and say, no. I will embrace the future. I will set sail and I will go for it. I will find my mountains. I will set huge goals for myself. I want to have purpose, right? With that connection to the past snapping, it also means that you can journey. And it's time to really try to do that. So do not wait. Do not procrastinate. Next year is a great year to, start doing shit. So I was saying, live now. Do not procrastinate. Things you truly want to do in life, do them. And also love now. Do not wait for the right moment or this or that. If there is something you want to have in your life, if you want love, if you want passion, well, do it. The same thing with learning and growing, do it. Grow out of procrastination, because now there will be more movement forward. Everybody wanting to move and to transform and adapt, they will. And you will all be able to feel that, there's suddenly more movement. But if we engage in conflict, there will be more of it. Because when we let ourselves be micro-triggered and let ourselves be annoyed by other people and what's happening in the world, it can consume us. Because think when the conflict levels will increase, right? That will then consume so much of our bandwidth. And remember that if we think in an axis, like conflict is east-west, right? And then think of north is moving towards goals, right? It's a south-north. That is the movement forward. The more conflict we have, the more we stand still. So we need to resolve that and also develop a mindset of saying, no conflicts, solutions. There's always solutions, and solutions may be different from what I think. There may be several solutions that may work. I just have to choose something that will pull me forward. Because as long as I'm in conflict, I'm standing still. So that is what we all need to focus on, is become more mature. Let go of conflicts, no matter what they are, also inside of you. All those internal discussions that are for nothing. And they happen because you have no true sense of direction. And this is, again, what we will see gradually change in the world, is that those with a clear sense of direction, with clear goals, with mountains to climb, they will do that and they will feel world is wonderful. So many opportunities, increased freedom. And then you have everybody else just fighting over everything. And it will be, we'll just see this change starting next year. And in the years to come, this will be clear. When you see it. So there are some people I was just feeling, this is the most wonderful world. And some people just be drowning in their own suffering and misery and conflicts. So try to discipline yourself to not be in conflict. Do not have useless discussions. Do not get irritated for nothing. Think, it should be this way. This is so annoying. No. Solution. And think of what will make me move forward. As long as it makes you move forward, it doesn't even have to be your first choice, right? A movement forward is better than conflict. So learn that way of thinking and then use the positive energy in the world, because the thing is, the world and the consciousness wants this process of the transition in the world to happen. That's the healing process. So when you move, when you transform, you're part of the healing. Right? When you are journeying on that kind of healing energy, you will become a tuning fork for it. And then you will be one that is amplifying the healing power in the world. Because if we're not, there will be a lot of conflict, right? So for that to transform, we need more and more examples of individuals who are living, loving, and learning their way forward, who reach their greatness in many different ways. And I think we will see in the years to come so many people reaching greatness in many different ways, right? Because it's not just financial success. It could be through art. It could be like, you know, being good at something, but finding your thing, right? Doing you, being you, and growing and expanding, and through that also increasing your love and generosity, and being on the opposite kind of like spectrum of conflict, anger, and frustration. So this is what we all should focus on. Well, always, but especially next year, because this is when this change will begin to manifest on this planet. But be aware of increasing conflicts anywhere, and that people will become more self-centered and feel that I have to fight for me. So I do it my way. And it means that you, as a spiritual journeyer, need to be compassionate when it comes to that. It comes from fear that people are trying to take shortcuts and just like basically cut the line and just like do whatever because this is what I need to do now. And just say, okay, this is where we are. So don't try to stop people from behaving that way. Don't turn it into a conflict, because this will be the new norm. Not just next year, but in the years to come, we'll see a lot more people behaving that way. Right? And they don't care about anything but their own survival. It's a combination of disconnection, of lower intelligence, less education, right? And then it's just animalistic instincts taking over. And that's where they are. And you can't change that. But you will have the choice on what example you want to set, right? Do you want to practice compassion? Do you want to practice love and then expanded awareness? It's up to you, right, to bring something in that points forward, right? It's always when you meet something that you feel, oh, this is too low. Well, move into higher consciousness to balance it out. You cannot balance it out by becoming the same. The moment you judge, you become the same. The moment you have a reaction, you become the same. You need to move in the opposite direction, which means lift your consciousness, right? So the world will have so many opportunities, and it's for you to look for them and start feeling that pull, because again, the gravitational pull of healing and bringing you forward to your potential, that will be noticeable next year. It will basically, like from spring approximately, that will become more evident, and you will feel it. It will be easier for you to achieve things in life if you're not in an energy of conflict, because that will stop anything. So it will be easier to notice where we are in our own consciousness. So to me, this is what we all need to be aware of, but this is how we can kind of play next year to achieve success in our lives and also spiritually.
Okay,
And then it was also about kids, right?
Yeah, it was about education and
Yes.
how to inject some of this into the schools.
Yes. Now, injecting into schools, forget about it, because it's collective consciousness and they are in a very different place. It's more about how we teach our own kids, right? And just say, schools, they provide education based on the collective consciousness, and that's fine. We can supplement, right? We can supplement wisdom and information and also additional education. I think it's important that parents are very much involved with their kids' education and not having kind of outsourced, such an important part of their kids' lives. So try to teach your kids more, right? And it is so important today. I always talk about this. We need to teach our kids science, the fundamentals, not to base their life on opinions and feelings, because there's so much of that in schools right now. They need to learn how to think both creatively and critically. and to use their minds and their abilities and educate them for real. And I think as parents, we set the example, we set the standard, and at home, we are also a culture, right? The kids will be affected by that. So the easiest way to influence our kids in a good way is, well, be a good example, right? Live what you know to be true. Kids will copy their parents, not just the good stuff. So try to diminish the bad stuff and try to show that you are an individual of curiosity, that you're journeying, that you're learning, that you're expanding, and that you're becoming better. And to try to show kids that this world has never been better. It's a wonderful place. If you want to grow and explore and become everything you can be, the planet has never been more interesting than right now. Remember that what will occur in someone's life will be according to the karma, right? So nothing can happen with you, to you, or for you unless it's part of your study program. So this is why we can be in the same place. You know, one will be shot to death, and the other person standing right next to will be eating an ice cream. This is the planet where it will get so much less homogeneous. Our individual paths will be so much more individual, and different levels of consciousness will exist in the same space. So teaching our kids to utilize the world, be part of the big shift, and to inspire them to grow and to play and to be everything they can be and to try to make a difference. Find purpose, be someone, and to not be a consumer, right? Not be someone who just pushes a button. Someone who takes responsibility and wants to be something. That is what we need to teach our kids. And then we should just set the example and kind of build the culture at home, because that's where it starts.
All right, we did have, I think, one more question in the audience.
Yes, lately, when trying to develop more and to reach goals and to think in a new way, like we talked about earlier, I've tried to connect more to intelligence outside, both in meditation and giving IKYA treatments, and it's almost like understanding things more outside of the brain. And when trying to grasp it more concretely after, it's a bit hard. Is that a part of not wanting to ground it, or is it just a part of starting to understand things and that it will gradually be more understandable also in the brain? Or is it like that we sometimes have to just understand things outside of the brain?
Right. Well, the brain will always try to understand what it is exposed to, right? It's obsessed with archiving, building maps, and building strategies. So when we, through spiritual work, we expand and we have experiences beyond our current understanding, the brain's got nothing, right? So I'm sure most of you have experienced this in meditation or whatever. We can be in states of consciousness and we have insight and we can see it and we understand it. And it's so logical, and it's like, duh, why didn't I understand this before? And then we get back and then we don't have no idea what we just understood, right? Because it does not, our brains cannot understand it. But it's also a sign that we've been in expanded awareness beyond the brain, right? This is a sign also that, yeah, consciousness exists beyond the biology. But what happens when we then try to sustain that consciousness and not try to understand it, the brain will gradually say, oh, there is something here, right? And we'll start computing and trying to figure out how to include it, because the moment their brain realizes, oh, this is real, it will try to test it against the existing definitions and maps and all of that, and then begin to change the maps and the archives and all of that to include it. So if you just experience something once, the brain will say, no, it's an anomaly, it doesn't count. But if it happens several times. So by repeated practices, repeated expansion into higher levels of consciousness, the brain will begin to build structures and brain cells dedicated to build a bridge. So it will kind of build itself into a higher level of consciousness so that you over time can have a brain biology that is able to both remember and understand and bring it into horizontal logic. So it happens over time, but is always a good sign when we expand beyond the brain, because, okay, now I'm in real expansion. If we understand it immediately, it's okay, it's within my current level of understanding, so that's not a true expansion, right? It's an exploration of my kind of current garden, but it's not outside of it. So always trying to expand beyond what we understand is important. It's one of the kind of key elements of how we can continue to kind of push the boundaries of our own sense of reality. But it's a natural process. The more we do it, the more the brain will get used to adapting faster, so that the biology can also start kind of building a more kind of concrete, kind of obviously like huge model of reality, and that's pretty fun too.
Okay, so we had a fun last question on YouTube. So Aki wonders, is 2024 finally the year where it's official that aliens are here and have always been here? And if not, what year will it be?
It will not, because humans are not ready for it. And as we know, it's now happening very, very slowly. But one of the things that will happen is that at some point, when you combine archaeology with physics and encounters of this or that, and one will see, oh, they've been here, like artifacts, that will definitely do it. When they find, and it will be official that they've found like old, like UFOs, you know, or like aliens or this or that, and it's exhibited. And then you have scientists from around the world getting samples that they all say, though, this is not from this planet. That will happen, but not yet. Just think of how humans relate to AI. How fast will humans not take responsibility for anything, right? So, no. And also humans are too immature. Right? Humans are still too aggressive. Humans will have to figure out how to get kind of past this, at least before aliens want to interact in any productive way officially, right? Because right now humans can't deal with it. There's absolutely no point. There's a point for humans, but not for aliens, and they know that humans will have to go through this process of maturity first, and it's always getting past this bump, right? So when humans have passed through this bump then, because then one knows that humans have kind of figured out, it will require both an elevation of consciousness and science, and that humans start to relate to the world and planet in a very different way, then they have proven that they can deal with it. Because then when aliens in a way present themselves, human will go, yeah, sure, this is natural. When they explain that we are connected, that we're part of the same family, it will be humans already understand, because then they will have begun to treat this planet as a family, right? So we need to practice it here first. We will get there, but humans are far from ready. It's just how it is. So back to next year and how to prepare. I say, like the procrastination thing. Next year, follow your dreams. Do what you've always wanted to do. Right? We need to live more. Because often what happens when there are crises, then we just stop. We go into survival mode, right? We just do what's necessary. And then we will become a product of fear. The other part of the planet that is opening up is the opposite. It's opportunity, it's greatness, it's fun. It's like things changing even faster and for you to reach your goals faster. So decide to not procrastinate. Look at all the little things. Also look at the big thing. Stop conflicts. Stop endless discussions. Always figure out ways to move forward, to bring yourself forward, to set greater goals, to connect to your inner greatness, right? And decide that you accept your greatness, right? So challenge accepted. Think of that as what you said before you incarnated, because that's kind of what it is. You have an enormous amount of potential. You can lift your consciousness, become so much more than you are, and the world and life will make so much more sense. I often talk about this, but as spiritual people, we should be in the forefront of everything. We have to show how it's done, right? So we need to be more compassionate. We need to show more empathy, more love, and more patience, but at the same time be more driven. Set higher goals. Be more creative, have more fun. Live more and love more and learn more and do all of it. Don't wait. Waiting is part of fear. From next year on, the planet will begin to open up. And when you are in the consciousness of embracing your potential, that's the version you will see. If you're in conflict and aggression and fear, that's the planet you will see. And that version of the planet will not go away for the next 200 years. And neither will the other version. That will just be amplified each year. And what we should try also to do together is inspire each other to only be in that version. Life will become increasingly fun and increasingly open, increasingly creative, and you will be able to reach your dreams and your goals faster than ever, not just next year, but for the rest of your life when you learn how to. And the key is the heart. The key is the love. The key is identifying as a spiritual being and seeing this as a playground where everybody is just in different role games and costumes, but where the only purpose is continuous expansion, the continued evolution. And understanding that we all have the seed of greatness in us. And the purpose of the journey is to fulfill that greatness and let it bloom completely. And that should be your goal for next year.
Thank you all for joining us tonight for IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news source for practical spiritual advice for everyday life, which I hope you got lots of tonight. Again, thank you all for 40 fantastic episodes of IKYA Live throughout 2023. It's been a fantastic year, and we look forward to an even more fun and productive and love and growth-filled 2024. We will be taking some weeks off and we'll be back in January. So look for us again on Mondays at 7 o'clock p.m., 19 o'clock Oslo time for IKYA Live. And until then, we wish you very happy holidays and a beautiful start to 2024. See you on the flip side.